Welcome back to another episode of Rob and Amos Ramble. To talk to. We have Rob Kowalski. Hopefully, I'm pronouncing that last name correctly. And he's got a thing called the Man of Options, which I hope to learn a lot about. And we're gonna talk about polygyny, which is not at all a topic that's not hotly contested. Is that accurate, Rob? I mean, is that
I don't think there's anything that's more polarizing than this, to be honest, especially when you tack on Christianity to it. It's like,
it blows some people's minds.
It does.
Cool. Well, Rob, maybe a good place for us to start is, why don't you mind sharing just a little bit about yourself and kind of what was your personal journey? I mean, I've seen you post a little bit about it on X here and there, and I've watched some other interviews you've done and podcasts you've been on, and I've kind of heard of it. Maybe for our audience who has never heard it before, I mean, what was your journey that you kind of ended up in this, like, you're a voice of polygyny? I don't know if that's the right way to reference you or not, but that's how I'm thinking about you.
Yeah, I consider myself probably the leading advocate for biblical polygyny. I know I'm producing more content than anyone in the world and generating more conversations and engagement. Some people call me a lightning rod, which I've always been pretty good at. But I was a notorious bad boy, man whore in my 20s, part of my 30s, mostly before meeting Jesus. I had a little exposure to Christianity as a kid. My uncle was a Christian, my mom not so much. But I never really heard God's voice or felt his presence. So as I became an adult, my God was pleasure. And I became like a stripper at a young age. 19 years old, I started stripping in my hometown of Baltimore. And I kind of eventually was working for all the entertainment agencies.
Is this like you were like going to bachelorette parties kind of thing?
Yeah.
Or what was the context?
Yeah, exactly. I worked for a review too, with mostly like traveled tri-state, like just a local few state area, but I did a lot of bachelorette and birthday parties, about 2,000 I calculated probably over the course of 8 years. And I had this so stripping through most of my early 20s, and then was kind of transitioned into nightclub promoting. So like I was pretty popular and knew a lot of girls, so I just kind of took over the nightlife of Baltimore for a while, and was throwing some really just crazy debaucherous parties and clubs. And right at kind of like the height of my popularity, I guess, or success in that field, at least, I had this really radical encounter with Jesus. I got baptized in the Holy Spirit. I prophesied. I just was 100% aware that Jesus is who he says he is, and that he had some expectations. He was asking me to follow him. And I just quit everything. I quit stripping. I quit promoting. I had this beautiful young girlfriend. Of course, I was having sex with, and broke up with her, and just committed myself to, being the best Christian I could be, which led. And I knew the teaching on monogamy only, because it's about as well attached to Christianity as any doctrine can be. And I just thought, okay, well, I guess I'm going to be a one-woman man now. And I assumed that with enough good behavior, God was going to give me this unicorn wife because I had sex with a lot of women, but I would always get bored. And sometimes, I would then inadvertently get into relationships. I even had a 5-year relationship at one point from 20 to 25. And, but I was never good at monogamy. Like I always had a wandering eye, and I always just kind of, even when I was in that 5-year relationship, I had a mental Rolodex of girls I was going to date or have sex with when we broke up. It was never like I assumed this was going to last forever. But when I became a Christian, I thought, okay, well, God, if I don't sin long enough, God's going to give me a wife, and she's going to knock my socks off, and she's going to be that perfect fit, because no woman has ever been able to satisfy me. No one woman. So it led, and I didn't think it was going to be long. I thought, God's going to probably bring her along in a couple weeks, maybe a couple months. And I was like, okay, I'll wait, God. And I had no experience with, abstinence at all. And I kind of prayed it, half joking, but mostly serious. I said, okay, God, I'll wait for her, but you better be quick, because, I can't wait long. And it turned into 6 years of abstinence. So, and I was 27 to 32, 33. I mean, it was like prime adult years. I was managing the Gold's Gym. I had plenty of women that wanted to date and just have sex with me, or maybe marry me. I don't know, whatever. They were just interested in me. But I would get to know them, and there was just nothing was telling me like, yeah, she's the one. And I would pray about girls, and God would never give me the green light. So eventually, after the 6 years of abstinence, I just backslid. I didn't even mean to. I just ran out of gas. I was just so burnt out and disillusioned that God didn't bring this wife along, that I just kind of fell, returned to my vomit, as the Bible says. I went back. I accidentally slept with a girl one night after going out with some friends drinking. And then after I kind of broke my 6-year streak, it became real easy to make that mistake again. And I, over the course of time, I just slowly became almost as bad as I was before meeting Christ, except I was just really guilt-ridden. My dad got diagnosed with cancer in 2010 or 11, I think it was. And I recommitted myself through purity to purity through a set of circumstances related to that. God really kind of like brought me to a place of repentance. And I didn't even fathom how I could get back to where I had been. Because at one point I was really on fire for the Lord, but I was so backslidden at that point. I just couldn't even imagine coming back. But he did bring me back, and I recommitted myself to purity. And again, that led to 12 more years of singleness and abstinence, waiting for this one woman. Again, never questioning monogamy. It didn't even cross my mind to think that the teaching might be wrong. I just would meet girls, and something in me just would not be able to commit to them. I would think.
Well, I mean, if you spend any
yeah.
time in a Christian church, I mean, you know this, right? I mean, it's like monogamy. I mean, that is it's anybody who's involved themselves in Christianity. I mean, that it makes perfect sense to me what you're saying. It's like, why would you even question that? That is an unquestionable doctrine.
Absolutely. And my pastor would even say, just pick one, man. Just pick. This is, he says, just pick one. And I was like, I can't. That's not how I'm built. Like, God's either got to give me the green light, and at that point I'll say, okay, yes, I'm going to make it work with her, because God knows best. He knows me. He created me. And if he says her, then she's the one. And if I feel these urges, then I'll just dismiss them. But he would never give me the green light. And I never met a girl that knocked me off my feet so badly that I would go to him and say, please, God, she's it. She's the one I want. It was neither happened. So I would never meet a girl that blew me away that much that I could go to God and say, please let me marry her. And God would never give me the green light on any of these girls that were interested in me. And there were a lot, because I was running a parachurch ministry that brought people to church through social events. And a lot of these events were in bars. I'm like the poster boy. So somewhere along the line in those 12 years, I made this video called 10 Reasons Not to Have Sex Before Marriage, because I had been abstinent for, a few years at that point. And I'm, not a bad looking guy. So there's not a lot of guys out there tatted up muscles and, talking about saving sex for marriage. So the video went viral, and I wrote a book because I really did feel I have a great perspective on why it makes sense for people to wait until marriage to have sex. So I wrote a book called Why Waiting Works, and won an award in Baltimore, like best book of the year one year, and got a lot of 5-star reviews on Amazon for a self-published book. But through those things, I kind of became like the poster boy for sexual purity without even meaning to. So now, and in hindsight, I really believe God did that, because it kind of painted me into a corner where I was like, I started getting really lonely after a few years, 4, 5, 6 years. And I did make 2 mistakes in those 12 years. I always have to mention that, because people would go, you weren't abstinent for 12 years. There was 2 isolated mistakes that I made. And that was really just trying my absolute best to hold the line. I was, around a lot of girls that didn't have that conviction that I had. And but I started to get, disillusioned and very lonely and depressed. And but I couldn't screw up, because I'd been so public about what I believed. And I spoke on stages at churches, and I went on international book tours in Romania. And it's like, I can't go out and sleep with a girl, like, because I was super lonely and depressed, but I couldn't do anything about it. So all that being said, about 2.5 years ago, I guess it was, just on a whim, I just was like, I saw a Netflix special, and there were some guys in it that had multiple wives, and it just got my wheels turning. And I was like, I wonder if there's any Christian denominations that believe in polygamy. I didn't even know the term polygyny. And I Googled it, and and I'll send this article to anybody who wants to check it out. I'd be happy to send it to you. And you tell me where he missed it, by a guy that goes by Berean Patriot. And he laid it all out. And all the verses that I had heard that have been said, misinterpreted to tell you that it's a sin, or, God just allowed it in the past, and that was just a thing for the Old Testament or whatever BS. They were all it's all lies. Like there's nothing in the Bible about monogamy only. It's not a sin. It was never called a sin. No one was ever punished for it. No one was even verbally corrected for it. And we see it all over the Bible by God's closest friends and the men that he handpicked to not only like write his word, but to lead his people. Like, you won't pick an adulterer to lead your people because he's the example for everybody. But God picked these men as to lead his special possession, Israel, and never corrected them once for doing this practice. And we see it over and over in the Bible. So at that point, for about 2 weeks, I woke up every day with anxiety because I was like, everybody's going to hate you if you talk about this. But I had to talk about it because of
if you come out and say, hey, all I've been saying is maybe not, it's wrong.
Purity is fine, but now I need 2 wives, not just one.
Well, the thing, I think purity still serves a purpose for sure. Because it definitely, gives you clarity on who you're choosing to marry. And you'll see a lot of the red flags maybe that you would miss if you were sexually active with that person. But monogamy only doesn't make men holy. It makes them hesitant is what it does. Because if I tell you you only get one of anything for the rest of your life, a car, a pair of jeans, a meal, whatever the thing is, you're going to want to try a lot of those things before you make a choice because you don't want to choose badly. If you would have told me that I could marry more than one woman, as long as I could protect and provide for her, 2, 3, 4, 5 wives, I would have married my girlfriend when I was 19. I did love her. I just couldn't get my mind around one for the rest of my life. So we dated for 5 years. Of course, we were having sex. And then I broke up with her because I wanted to, have a little variety or experience other things. So I just believe God knows how he wired men, human nature. I saw some Netflix documentaries recently, Tiger Woods, Hulk Hogan. Who was the other one? I saw Elvis, and all 3 of them, every one of them had the same issue. They all cheated, they all stepped out. Like a high value man, like as he expands and he becomes more wealthy or more successful, like there's no outlet, there's no ceiling. I mean, there's a ceiling right now with monogamy only. There's no way for them to, maybe she's 45 and she can't have kids anymore, and he's 50 and he wants some more kids. Well, he can make a baby still, and you can certainly support him if you're a guy like Tiger Woods. But this
I personally think as a 50-year-old man, you're crazy. I'm good, man. I got enough kids.
I'm crazy because I had my first about 4 months ago, and I'm 53. So but I hear you.
We have some friends that have done a similar stuff, and more power to you guys, man. But just for me and like kind of how my life has unfolded, I'm like, no, we had all the kids. I'm having fun right now, But
yeah, I hear you. I wish I would have started sooner, though. You're right. It would have been much easier sooner. I had a lot more energy back then.
Yeah. Anyway,
so
I didn't mean to interrupt you. Go ahead,
no. So basically, I kind of had to come out. I just, prayed about it a lot. I mean, God instantly, when I discovered this information, and I have good discernment, man, you don't wait all those years unless you're hearing from God. Like it was really difficult to be abstinent that long and single and to go through what I went through. And God just instantly gave me green lights about not only was this true, but that I was supposed to talk about it. So I, just came out with it. I started making content, and of course, instant backlash. Lost my church, lost my Bible study. Family members, weren't happy about it. Friends, lost friends. But to me, it's the most damaging false doctrine since the garden. That's the only lie that has hurt more people than this.
Yeah.
And you don't think about it, because if you're like, to be honest, the only reason I ever saw it was because I was equally committed to not settling and also not having sex before marriage. So I was stuck in between two like forces that were pulling me in opposite directions. I wouldn't have sex with girls, but I also couldn't settle because of the way I knew that I was wired. So I was like stuck in this impossible situation. Most Christians aren't committed to either, right? They do have sex outside of marriage, the majority of the singles, at least the ones that can. And then the divorce rate's almost identical in the church as it is outside. So they're not really even committed to not settling because they get divorced just as bad as the world. So that was the reason why I even saw it, because I wouldn't have noticed it. But now I see the problems that it causes, because when you tell a high value man, and I use high value, I know it's a term that people don't like, but it's, to me, a high value man is just the man that women are choosing already. They're already choosing. Like they say, some people say 80% of the women are sleeping with 20% of the men. Some people say it's 90-10, 95-5. I don't know what the number is, but we know that a majority of the women are pursuing a minority of men. They're the ones that are getting all the swipes on the dating apps, and they're the 6 foot tall, 6-figure, 6-pack abs, whatever. Those guys, they're cleaning up right now because women are hypergamous. They want to date a man that's above them. They want to look up to a man. They want to be able to respect him. In order to respect a man, you need to be able to look up to him. He needs to make more money than you. And he needs to probably be better educated than you. But because of women's rights and the fact that women are making more money than ever in history and they're better educated than ever in history, their dating pool is shrunk because now you got a smaller pool of men that are actually above them. Mm-hmm. So that's why you see all these incels. You get some crazy percentage of men, young men, haven't had sex in like a long time, years, because of the women are pursuing those top tier men. But the thing is when you tell the top tier man that he gets one, guess what he does? He drags his feet. He doesn't commit. He samples the whole menu. So he just runs a rotation. And those women basically get their setting stuck on that number man. If he's a sexual market value 9, she might be a 6. Because a 9, a sexual market 9 will sleep with a woman who's a 6 or a 7 or an 8, because this is just how we are. We're not hypergamous. We're hypogamous. We're the opposite. Like we don't mind dating across or down. But
it reminds me, I don't know if you follow Billy Bad Pratt or not, but he posts all the time about the slump buster. Right? I don't know, is this a term you're familiar with at all?
No.
Yeah, it's like a chick, like if she's not really that attractive, she's not whatever. Yeah. It's like men are still like, yeah, it's fine, I'll sleep with her.
Right.
Too,
she's
whatever.
Yeah, she's easy. Right. It's just take an easy one. Yeah. And that's what guys do. But then what happens is that girl that's a 7, now she's got her setting stuck on a 9 man. She thinks, oh, he slept with me, so I can get a 9 husband. So her real sexual market value equal all the 7s, 7.5s, 8s, all those men that would marry her, they're invisible. So that's why you got the marriage rates are in the freaking toilet right now. Like they're the lowest that they've ever been in history right now.
Yeah. Well, then you get into that whole thing where like talk about like, well, did the woman settle too? Because like she gets to whatever age, she's 30, 40, right? And she's like, okay, crap, I just need a husband. Like I'll marry the 7, but then she's not really happy, and we have all these duty sex conversations, like all these other. This is how it messes up the whole dating market, because again, so that she hits the wall, she turns 35 years old or whatever, and she's like, I need to have a baby, so she starts going to church and she starts looking for a safe guy. But the thing is that man, it's hard to respect a man like that when you've been dating this Chad. You've been banging Chads in your 20s, and now you're with a guy who's got little sexual experience. And so you crank out a couple babies with him, and then guess what? 80% of the divorces are followed by women. Why? Because they don't respect the man that they actually had to marry, instead of just letting them marry their first choice. Stop telling the Chads that they get 1 and maybe they'll marry 4 or 5. They're not going to be able to marry more than that. You look at a guy like Clavicular, right? This guy that streams all the time. Let him marry 4 women. He's going to bang 4,000. Like, why wouldn't we just let him marry 4? He'll be capped out at some point. He's going to have his hands full. He won't be able to go out and just pollute the entire dating pool of a city. But that's exactly what monogamy only causes. It is the root of our hookup culture. It's this false doctrine, because it didn't even come from the Bible. It came from Rome. Like, if you look at Israel, they were very clearly polygynous. I don't know how anybody could even debate that. Almost all of God's closest friends, again, had multiple wives. God never corrected them. We see a lot of people in the Bible that had multiple wives. So they were polygynous. Now, Rome was not polygynous. They were a monogamy only culture. You could only have one wife on paper, but you could have mistresses and prostitutes, and you could sleep with boys, and you could do all this degenerate behavior, but you could only have one wife. It's kind of like America is now, right? Because the doctrine of monogamy only did not come from the Bible. It came from Rome, because as Christianity spread outside of Israel and started going into Greece and Rome and all these other monogamy only cultures, we adopted their practices, and it became illegal actually to have more than one wife. So, maybe it was the persecution, but the polygyny wasn't even mentioned negatively until the 4th century. So like people say, oh, the 1st century church, it was out. Polygyny was not being practiced by the time the Bible was written. That's BS, man. I mean, like, if anybody wants to Google this, they can feel free. Just Google the world's oldest letter
it's not even a religious document. It's a historical document. And it was written between two Christians. And the guy references polygyny. He says, tell your wives, or give greetings to your wives or something. So he references polygyny in a letter. And that was like, second or third century. I forget the date, but it was being practiced. And I just think, I think that Isaiah 4:1, the prophecy, I don't know if you know that prophecy about 7 women will take hold of one man. Basically,
I've heard it. Yeah.
Yeah. So I believe it's a future prophecy, and I think we'll see the fulfillment of that at some point, maybe in the near future. I don't know. I think it cleanses. I think polygyny cleanses the land. I think that feminism is a cancer. I think it's infected the Christian church. And I think the way that you cleanse the church or a culture of feminism is you restore what God said about polygyny, because it automatically sets the relationship in the proper order where you have God, man, woman, child. Monogamy only creates this egalitarianism where we're kind of equals. We're like, okay, I can't, and because that's the number one comment I see in my post is women say, oh, so I guess I can have multiple husbands too. I'm like, no, that's called adultery in the Bible. Like the church doesn't even define adultery correctly. That's how crazy this psyop is. We've been taught that adultery is sleeping with someone besides your spouse. That's not what the Bible says. Adultery is linked to the marital status of the woman, right? It has to be another man's wife for it to be adultery 100% of the time in the Bible. That's what adultery is. So like anybody that tries to say like, polygyny is adultery, I'm like, so you're telling me that because adultery was a capital crime. Let's first realize that you got stoned to death if you were an adulterer in the Bible. So you're telling me that all these men that spoke with God face to face, that they were called a man after God's own heart, like they penned his word, they were all committing adultery, and God, not only did he not kill them, he didn't even mention it. Like that's the dumbest thing that I've ever heard. So first off, we have to get back to defining the words correctly. Why did God define the marital status adultery based on the marital status of the woman? That's the first question everyone should be asking. Because of polygyny. That would be the only reason. Why wouldn't it just be anybody sleeping with someone that's not your spouse? It's because a man can have multiple wives. Because our relationship with our wife is supposed to represent our relationship with God. God can love many, right? I can't tell God, you can only love me, God. No, he can love as many as he wants. But I can have no other gods before him. I have to be loyal to him. It's a perfect mirror of our relationship with God, which it's no coincidence that Jesus chose in the parable of the 10 virgins, a polygynous wedding to represent his second coming. People say, oh, they were bridesmaids. BS. They were not bridesmaids. They were brides. They got locked out of the wedding chamber and they banged on the door and said, Lord, Lord. You know what that word means? Person who I belong to. Look it up. You don't call your friend's future husband master, person I belong to, right? Like they were frantic to get into the wedding because it represents the church, the people that are not ready. We're the bride of Christ. We're not the bridesmaids of Christ. Like it wouldn't even make sense. Who do the bridesmaids represent in the parable? Because everybody's got to represent somebody. So you're saying my friends come to heaven with me, and then what? They got to leave after the buffet's over? Like it doesn't even make sense. It's all just it's crazy talk. But sorry, I can talk about this all day. I'll just ramble if you let me, man. I got to give you a chance to ask questions.
It all begs the question. You were willing to model purity. How come you only have one wife? That's what all my monogamous female friends want to know, is because Rob mentioned that you might bring your wife on, and I mentioned it to one of my friends, and she was like, well, which one? And I was like, well, he only has one wife. And she said, but why? So that's the question now.
Yeah. So the thing is it's not, it's not a side chick, right? It's not a mistress or a FWB. It's not a friends with benefits. This is someone that I'm going to make a commitment, a lifetime commitment to protect and provide for. So I'm going to be very picky and I'm going to be very patient because it's a serious commitment. Like I don't believe in divorce. I think God's pretty clear. Like unless my wife cheats on me, I told her, I said, I'll never divorce you and I'll never cheat on you. How many men can actually say that under monogamy and actually deliver on it? Right? Because there's a lot of guys that cheat. I mean, the divorce rate is super high. And anytime I bring up that 80% of those divorces are filed by women, they always go, well, that's because the men weren't faithful. So you're telling me that the monogamous men are cheating? Well, that kind of supports my argument, because I'm not saying you should cheat. I'm saying you should be honest from day one.
Yeah.
Tell the woman this
100% agree.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Here's the thing. It doesn't even need to be practiced. This is what I tell people. Polygyny doesn't have to be practiced. I may never practice it. I don't know if God will give me another wife, but it should always be on the table for every man, because it sets the relationship in the proper order. It pushes her more into her feminine. It pushes you more into your masculine, and it creates that much needed polarity. This is why women are getting bored in monogamy only marriages, because there's no polarity. Like they're going more into their masculine because the man has no options. So like everybody, I don't know if you guys have heard of this, but I've heard that the sex stops after you get married. I've heard that a lot from people. And I'm like, well, why would it stop? Because for me, I'm waiting. So that's when it's going to start. I believe it stops because there's no competition anxiety. There's no even threat of another woman once you get married. So guess what? The woman kind of gets there and she's like twiddling her thumbs and she's bored. So she's like, she blows up her family just to get out of the boredom. Now, I don't think it's as conscious, but if you go back and you read scripture, clearly Exodus 21:10 lays out the regulations for taking another wife. It says, if he takes another wife, he must not diminish the first foods, clothing, and conjugal rights. God doesn't regulate sin. There's no verse in the Bible that tells you how to steal properly. Right? It doesn't exist. God doesn't tell us how to sin properly. It's there, and there's a reason that it's there. But again, it doesn't need to be practiced. But every man that's watching this needs to grow a set of balls and tell their wife, this is biblically permissible, because I believe it will divorce-proof your life, your marriage.
I think, you're kind of getting into a topic of like, about like, I mean, sex is so often used as leverage in marriage, right? And
it doesn't have to end at marriage. Trust us.
Right. It doesn't have to end in marriage. Yeah. I mean, we this is a topic we talk about a lot. I mean, probably 80% of what we talk about is this topic of like, people are like, oh, the sex ends in marriage. And it's like, well, gosh, nobody notified us and it's been 30 years. Right. But but there is a very real kind of power dynamic that happens in these marriages, right? Where like, you're like monogamy only. And the wife is like, okay, well, it's a tool I can use to assume power in the marriage, right? Because if I pull back sex, the husband, he has very limited options, versus what you're talking about is, well, if that's not true, and actually the husband has lots of options, well, then where's the leverage for the wife to use sex in that manner, right? And as you're saying, and I agree with this very much, she's not assuming the masculine role, right? That pushes her back into her feminine. So to me, that makes a whole lot of sense what you're saying, and I do think, I kind of have this thing I talk about, which is like, you just kind of have like the fuck it attitude. Right. And I don't, I've always kind of been upfront with Avis. Like, I mean, I'm not going to put up with, a lack of sex and all these things in our marriage. Right. And if that's a thing, like, as you were saying, like, I will continue to take care of you. You're my wife, all those things, but I'm still going to get my sexual needs met in some way. But
not as cheating, it'll be a discussion. Right. This isn't happening. This is what I plan to do.
Right.
From his
I don't think men should cheat. I 100% agree with that. I think,
I don't even think cheating is a biblical concept, though, to be honest. No. Now, look, if you're lying, I guess you could say you're cheating, but really biblically, a man can't cheat. He can only take another wife. Now, if you're sleeping with another man's wife, then that would be cheating, because that would just be adultery. But, this idea of cheating is nowhere in the Bible. Where was a man called a cheater in the Bible for having more than one wife? I don't see it. It's not in there. So like, I get what you're saying, but we have to realize how much we've been indoctrinated by our culture, but it's not biblical. So, but I just wanted to interject on that.
Yeah, no, I think we're saying a similar thing. Yeah. I mean, I think I've always told Avis, like, I would never blindside her, right? If shit has gone so sideways that like I'm out looking for, I've got to have sex with someone else, like, I just tell them, right? Like that. And actually that might be a thing that's actually in marriage, right? Because your wife's like, oh wait, he does have options, right? Like,
absolutely.
So, I just think I've made a post a couple of weeks back talking about how cheating was kind of the simpiest behavior out there, right? Like, everyone about who the simps are. It's the guys who are cheating. Don't cheat.
100%.
Be a man. Tell your wife what's going on.
I need only take Rob around town to know I have competition.
Yeah.
I literally walked into a store the other day and he was wearing a tank top, and this woman that we see quite often, she was like, wow, shoulders. I was like, I'm here.
yeah.
No,
Not a
I think
chick I've ever
women
been
need a little of that. Women need a little healthy competition anxiety. I had
Sure.
this guy that was a Green Bay Packer on my podcast, and he had 2 wives, and he said, you know, he was telling me how great his first wife was before he brought in the second. He goes, you know, as good as she was, do you think she became better or worse when I brought in the second? I said, I don't know, better. And he goes, yeah, better. I was like, interesting. He said, yeah.
All the women,
yeah, go ahead.
Sorry. All of my monogamous female friends feel like it only deteriorates because you get that like behavior and like the cat fighting and the.
If you choose poorly, if you choose poorly, sure. But what he said was, he said, when I played for the Packers and he was a Pro Bowler, he said, you know, would I have loved it if the coaches would have came to me and said, hey, you know, his KGB is what he goes by. Hey, KGB, you're the starter. Don't even worry about it. You're going to play every Sunday. Nobody's coming for your spot. He said, yeah, I would have loved it. My ego. He said, but you know what kept me to be my best player? Knowing that there were people coming for my spot. And he said, that made me my best player. So again, it doesn't necessarily need to be practiced, but I just like what you said, Rob, like no woman wants to be with a man that's afraid of losing her. Like she doesn't.
Yeah.
So if you were to put polygyny on the table, it's like, it shows that I'm not afraid of losing you. Like the Bible says this, it does say this, and men will hide it because they're afraid that their wife will freak out on them. That's not patriarchy. You know, that's something I tweeted a while back is like, patriarchy without polygyny is possible. Like you guys sound like you have a patriarchal relationship, but polygyny without patriarchy is impossible. Like you can't have polygyny on the table and not have patriarchy because you're automatically going to have it. So that's why I say divorce proofs a marriage, because you automatically get patriarchy. So there's guys that are in my program and they're like in sexless marriages and their wife's disrespectful. And I'm like, give them advice on what to do. And automatically their sex life picks right back up. Their wife becomes more submissive. It's because, again, I just believe that God wired, like he knows how he wired us. And this fits perfectly with our human nature. No one can convince me that this is the best we can do, that we have a 50% divorce rate, rampant fornication, all these 25% of children being aborted, fatherlessness epidemic. It's a disaster. Monogamy only is a dumpster fire. Yeah. And the way to fix it is to get back to what scripture actually says on this topic and get the church to admit that this is not a sin. Stop asking men who believe this to leave your churches, because you'll read the Psalms of David. You'll preach from Proverbs, Solomon's the book of wisdom. But if those men walked into your church with their families, you would ask them to leave, which is the craziest shit I've ever heard. You'll build your life around a book written by men with multiple wives, but then accuse a man with multiple wives of being in a cult today. How is that not the biggest psyop that's ever happened?
Yeah. Well, let me ask you a question. Like the men that you're talking to that have an interest in this, I mean, what is the main driver? I mean, is it sex? And I just, in my kind of like, you know, browsing around X and seeing different men talking about this topic, and a lot of times is what I personally have kind of observed is it's just comes down to, they're like, oh, like, yeah, I want to have a threesome with 2 chicks and myself. Right. And it's like, this is my biblical answer to do that. And is that the mindset of kind of, you know, where men are being driven towards this idea, or is it something bigger than that?
Well, I think sex is definitely part of it. I mean, we would be a fool to try to deny that is, you know, not part of the equation, because, sure. But if you're only doing it for sex, you're a fool, because you're going to sign up for a lifetime of responsibility for that woman, carrying her groceries in, changing her flat tires, you know, just being there for her emotionally. And after you have sex, let's be honest, 25, 50, 100 times, is it really going to be this brand new experience with that person? No, it's going to be the same as it is if you have with your first wife. So it's not going to be brand new, right? If your goal is sexual variety, don't get married. Just do what the Christians are doing now. Just rotate through every, you know, few months, every few years, just change girlfriends. And right, that's what you should do. Like, honestly, that's going to give you way more variety and a lot less responsibility, right? Trust me, I did it. I know it's way easier. People think that polygyny benefits men. No, polygyny benefits women. Fornication benefits men. Monogamy only benefits men because it gives weak men that are undeserving of even one wife a chance to get one. Because what happens is, as the women get older, they lower their standards and they just, like we talked about.
Right.
And then they go marry that guy that probably wasn't going to get one. So
right.
like,
And then they end up miserable and divorced it, whatever.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. Like, I think that's why monogamy only is such an easy sell to men, because it rewards mediocrity, right? Like, it tells them you don't need exceptional behavior to have, or exceptionality to have sex. You can just be average and still get laid. That's why men will accept it too. Like, but it doesn't benefit. Polygyny's for women. It makes sure.
So polygyny for men is easy to see. Like, that's an easy connect the dots. Explain to the women, why is polygyny better for women? Because from a woman's point of view, when I interview my friends about this, we hear like less time with your man, less sex with your man, less money from your man, dividing resources. How is all of this working into better for the woman?
Well, first off, it gives them a chance to marry the man that they actually want, right? Their first choice.
Half of him is what they're going to say, because you're sharing him.
Right. Well, would you rather have half of your favorite meal or all of a crappy meal?
Okay.
Most people would rather share a great meal, their favorite meal, than have a old tuna fish sandwich all to themselves. So that's one thing. Okay. So I believe that polygyny was God's social welfare system to make sure that all of his daughters had a covering. That's what I believe. I think singleness is for men. It's not for women, right? A man doesn't need a wife. A man needs a mission. That's what a man needs, right? He needs a relationship with God, and he needs a mission. Eventually, he might need a helpmate. And if he does the work on himself, maybe God will give him one. But every woman needs a covering. Every woman needs a husband. A woman without a husband, there's nothing worse for society than a bunch of single women running around that can't find husbands, because they end up having sex and they make babies. And that's how sex and culture. This is how 100% of all societies collapse, is you get a bunch of female promiscuity and you get all these kids without dads. They become degenerates, they get locked up or whatever the thing is, and then the society collapses. So women need to be covered. Now, polygyny gets them covered because you stop falsely telling men that they only get one. Okay, so there's one thing. Second, again, when I bring up that 80% of the divorces are filed by women will push back and they say, well, that's because men are trash. Okay, well, you just supported my argument, because polygyny allows you as a woman to actually choose a man with a proven track record of success. You can just, if I just decide to marry a woman and she's kind of kicking the tires on me, she could just go to my wife and say, how is Rob as a husband? Does he look at porn? Does he beat you? Does he, support you financially? She's not going to get a dud because she can already see how I'm doing in my marriage. Like when you marry under monogamy, it's like hiring somebody for their first job. You don't know what you're going to get. And like, I see these women that are over 30 and they're still holding out for this monogamy only dream. And it's like, what kind of men are even single at that age? Like, they're either suffer from chronic, inability to commit, or they're divorced. It's one or the other. They're not high value and single and not have been, sleeping around. They're one of and they may be low value and single, which is what a lot of them are, right? They might like a beta or whatever you want to call it, just a safe guy that, doesn't have a lot of experience. But then again, but that's not the guy that you want as a woman. You want a guy that you can look up to and respect. So like, I think it allows women to marry their first choice. It allows them to choose better, but also like, I had a guy with 6 wives, and then he admittedly said that's too much. I'm not saying that anybody should do 6 wives. Maybe 2, 3, 4 at the most. I would imagine would probably any man should do that. But that's up to each man to decide. But he talked about how easy it was. Like he said, look, every woman, they all contributed to the household income. He wasn't just him doing everything. Read Proverbs 31. And women push back on that and say, oh, you let your wife take a job. I didn't say that. But if she wants us to have a side hustle, or she wants to work to support my mission, of course I'm going to have her do that, right? Proverbs 31, that woman was very industrious. But each woman contributed a small percentage to the household income. She only had to cook dinner one night a week. And he's like, it was a fantastic meal because she had all week to put to her thought and her womanly love into that one meal. So this guy ate like a king every night. And they all had hobbies. They all had help with the kids. Like, you know what it's like to be in monogamy now for a couple? I mean, you probably do. It's really difficult because most families, most monogamous couples, both people have to work full time. right? If you got kids, they're going to daycare being raised by strangers. They're going to public schools being indoctrinated.
No,
Everybody's running around like chickens with their heads cut off.
Yeah, no, I talk about this all the time, and I think it's I understand the reality of economics and just how economically challenged it is. And you're right. I mean, most couples, both couples are working, they're pulling their hair out, all that other sort of stuff, just trying to stay above float. In our relationship, I mean, Avis hasn't worked in 25 years, right? We've just been fortunate in kind of that, probably longer than that actually now, but just in that realm. But I understand it's not a place a lot of couples are, but
Right.
yeah, just saying, I agree with what you're saying. I mean, I know it's the reality of a lot of.
Yeah, and I think the other thing is a woman gets if you do it right. Now, this is why a woman. The beauty of for women is you get to choose who you submit to, right? It's up to you to decide. So, like, I'm not saying you marry a bum. You got to vet the guy very carefully. This goes back to why you should wait, why you shouldn't have sex, so you can see the red flags. But vet the man carefully. Meet the woman. Do you guys click? Can she be your best friend? Like that's what I'm looking for. You ask why I only have one. Because I'm very picky. Like if I meet a woman, I'm going to take her on some dates. I'm going to pray. I'm going to fast. I'm going to introduce her to my wife. I don't want chaos into my home. I got a great marriage. I don't want competition. Is she bringing something to the table that's going to help us go further and faster? Right. If she is, and she can be a best friend of my wife, then maybe we'll do that. But again, like women like the company of other women. The problem with monogamy, I think, is you try to turn your husband into your girlfriend. You start wanting to talk to him all the time. And like, I don't want to talk. I want to work. I want to work on my mission, babe. So like if she has a girlfriend in the house, I don't know about you, Rob, but like nothing for me is better than being around that feminine energy when there's a couple girls giggling and talking to each other and I get to be the guy that takes care of them. Dude, nothing makes me feel more like a man. So, I think there's legitimate benefits for men and for women in this relationship structure, but we've been so indoctrinated to believe that it's something negative. And I believe that was purposeful. Because I think that polygyny would make families wealthy and very hard to control because you'd have a lot of kids, boys, and the government doesn't want these big, thriving, multi-generational families. They want a man with 1.6 kids with a 50% divorce rate because then the population is real easy to control because we're all broken and we're just a shell of ourselves because we've been ran through the court system. So like, they don't want this to come out. That's what I believe. It's about control. So like I think there's legit benefits for both sexes.
It's funny you talk about wanting to just enjoying kind of seeing women being women and taking care of them and all that. And I know some guys are probably going to like fry me for this, but I mean even Avis, like if we go out and she she has friends out or whatever, right? And she, I've been to dinner several times with her and a few of her friends and female friends and. I always pick up dinner. I always like, if you're with me, you're with me. I'm taking care of you, right? I'm enjoying the interaction. I'm enjoying the interaction she's having, like, all that sort of stuff. And it's just how I view it. And I know that's very foreign to a lot of these guys. They're like, no, man, you don't even pay for your girlfriend's dinner, right? That's on her. I'm like, no, I pay for my wife and all the friends she has, right? I mean, that's just the way I see it. But so just kind of clicking with what you're saying there about like, I mean, it's a good environment.
He's the man. That's his job.
Right.
Take care of us.
Absolutely. Yeah. Again, I got this thing. It pushes you more into your masculine,
so
one of many benefits.
Let me ask you. So what does it look like? So these guys that have wives or have multiple wives, and even if you're looking for a wife, I mean, what is that looking like for these men in terms of dating? Like practically, what is that looking like? Right. So you're like, hey babe, I'm heading out on a date to check out this other chick. I mean, just walk me through kind of like from a practical point, because I'm sure that's a question people have. Like, how does this actually work in real life?
Yeah, I guess it's probably for each man, it would be a little different. Like my wife is super cool about it. She's on board. She cold approaches girls sometimes. We were in Dominican Republic and she saw this cute girl at the bar and she walked over and started talking to her and ended up getting her Instagram and we ended up hanging out with her that night. She wasn't a good fit for us, but like, she's done that many times. She has single girlfriends that she's like, hey, you should think about Rob. Like, so she trusts me that I'm not going to choose poorly. Like she knows that I listen to God and I'm not going to just act like a horny teenager in my flesh. I've seen it happen though. That legit happens. But again, I go back to the woman and say, well, you married him, right? Why'd you marry this dude? Like you shouldn't have, but because once you're in it as a woman, you're in. That's it. The Bible doesn't even permit a woman to divorce, right? So like you got to be really careful as a woman who you choose. I think there's so many layers to this. If you really want to fix the problem, it's got to go back to the fathers, man. The fathers got to get involved and help vet the men, because it's not fair to a young girl to be out there in the wilderness trying to the men are wolves, dude. They're all trying to take from her, right? They're all trying to have sex with her and just extract value from her. So it's like the fathers really got to get back involved and helping choose good husbands for their daughters, but that's not the question. So guys that do it well, there's a guy in my program that I'm thinking of, and he said he went on 5 or 6 dates in the last 2 weeks. So he's really active. And his same with his wife, she cold approaches at times, but he'll go on a few dates with the woman, and if he thinks that there's potential there, then he'll take them both out together and he'll see if how the synergy is. But he's not having sex with these women. He's just getting to know them, loves the Lord, praying about it, just walking it real slow, but he still only has one wife. So I think, to me, it's like running a business, hire slow, fire fast, right? Like if you meet somebody, just take it slow, pray about it, see, but if they show you some red flags, then you get rid of them and you look for the next one.
It's kind of interesting what you're talking about, how your wife even kind of playing a role in funneling.
Yeah. It is. Yeah, it's definitely different
about that. So the cold approach. So we're at a restaurant, maybe there's a bar, she sees a hot chick and she's like, oh, she could maybe be a potential. So she goes up and she starts talking. Is she like, hey, I'm a polygynist. Would you like to marry my husband? I mean, how does that play out? Because your vast group of society is not forward thinking in this manner. Are there like specific dating apps for this, or where's this community happening?
There are, but I don't really subscribe to them. I don't believe in they're like sister wives. I think maybe .com or Christian polygamy is another one. They are actually specific dating apps, but I'm like, there's not a bunch of, high quality women going, oh, let me jump on this sisterwives.com. No, that's not happening, because
you're trying to convert from the wild.
Yeah, you gotta, I think what we talk about this a lot in Man of Options, actually, because, there's some guys already have 2 wives. Some guys are single. Some guys have 1. They're looking for their second. So we discuss all the best strategies, what's working for guys and what's not. But yeah, like one of the things would be my wife's just really good at conversation, and she would just go up and talk to a girl, be friendly, and then exchange numbers with her, and then maybe we invite her out and see, if there's any chemistry. But rather than looking for someone that's polygynous, like one of the things that I tell the guys in Man of Options is really you're looking more for submissiveness, because a submissive woman can be shown this. She already wants to submit, right? So once you open the Bible and you say, let's just go, because I'd be happy to do that now, or with any person, to sit down on a one-on-one with any woman or even a Bible scholar and say, let's just see what the Bible says. I get it that it's polar, like it's a visceral response, as people hate this topic, but it doesn't change what the Bible says. We could look at the Bible and we can see what it says. And if you're dealing honestly with scripture, you can't dismiss it. Okay. So I think a submissive woman, if she's actually just shown this, it's a lot easier to convert her. Now, another tactic could just be to say, what do you know about polyamory? Because that's such a trending thing right now. Most people are open to polyamory. They're not open to polygyny because it seems so one-sided, right? Like it's all about the guy.
Yeah. Polyamory seems like I want to have a threesome with you, whereas polygyny seems like I want to take you in and take care of you, in my mind. So
yeah, but polyamory is, you're not wrong. I think what I would say is, what do you know about polyamory? And if they say, oh yeah, I know a little bit about, well, it's biblical polyamory is what is a term that we kind of, and then they say, oh, okay. They don't hate it. And then they're like, what's that? Well, it's just like normal polyamory, but there's no other men involved. Right. Like that's a little bit, for whatever reason, it's a little bit more palatable for people because it's just a trending topic. But no, to your point, it's not easy. It's not an easy conversation to broach. We've tried some guys have tried putting on their dating profile right out, looking for another wife to add to our family. And then they don't get that is a super small percentage of matches. And then some guys will just put ethical non-monogamy and then not say what exactly they're looking for, and they get more matches. And some guys would not say, would just kind of put see where it goes or something, and they would even get more matches. But then that's a bigger time investment, because at some point you have to tell the person,
right?
like,
There's kind of this moment of, hey, surprise, I actually have a
What?
wife, and
it would be super. Can I cuss or no?
Dude, you do whatever you want.
Okay.
I don't care.
Yeah, it would be super shitty to sleep with a girl and then
Yeah.
tell her, oh, by the way, I'm married, or I'm looking for a second wife after you've had sex with her, because that to me is unethical.
Yeah.
But so don't do that. But yeah, it's this is kind of like why I feel like my life mission is to normalize polygyny. So I post about it multiple times a day, and every possible, like I try to frame it in every way that I can. And I read a lot of comments. I've learned a lot from people in the comment section, and I'm just trying to arm people so they can go out and share this information, because at some point, like I almost compare it to the homosexual movement, and I don't agree with male homosexuality. I think it's an abomination, but I do respect what they did. Like at some point they said, we're not going to sit here and just get beat up anymore or hide. They said, they started marching and they took their rights. So like when I came out, never in 23 years of being a Christian, I never heard one person ever mention Christianity and polygamy in the same sentence. So I never looked into it. And it cost me, man, because I had so many women that wanted to marry me. And if you would have just told me I could marry more than one, I would have committed to her and I would have had a bunch of kids by now. Instead, I just had my first one 4 months ago. So like I live with a lot of regret because of that. So I just want to be the guy that I wish somebody was for me 23 years ago. So when I started posting about this, I was like, there's got to be people that knew this and they just didn't say anything because they're too scared of taking the backlash. So I'm like, I'm going to come out and I'll take all the smoke, because if it empowers somebody else to stand up, then great. That's how we're going to get this thing changed. We have to stand up and say, look, I don't care. You can shame me. You can mock me. You can kick me out of your churches, but it's the truth, and you can like it or not. But I'm gonna stand for the truth and not tradition.
I connect with that big time. Yeah, I mean, we're not talking about the polygyny topic, but the same idea. It's like I'm talking about a lot of topics on behalf of these guys. Like we don't have all these problems going on in our marriage, but it still needs to be talked about, right? And like people deserve to kind of know the way it should be and the way it can be. And if people don't speak up about that, they don't know. They don't know what the reality is.
I think you've done a really good job of laying it out like it's biblical. Like it's not a sin, like it's not a moral issue.
Well, that's a great lead in, Avis. Thank you.
Hold on, I'm not quite done. But like for me in my circles, the women are still like little catty about it. So like you've done a really good job of saying it's not a moral issue, it's not a sin, it's biblical. But now practically introducing women and getting them comfortable with that, I think that's the next step in my circle
to
the people that I talk to about it.
Yeah,
that is the biggest challenge. Like I've asked women, I'm like, look, if a man was everything that you ever wanted, would you be open to this? Yeah. And sometimes they'll go, if he was everything I ever wanted, maybe. And usually it's when they get a little older, because they've already spent their 20s chasing it, right? And it's women want a man that other women want, but then they want that man to only want them. And those two things are rarely the same man, because if other women want him, very rarely will he only want one. He may say he does because that's kind of the way society's structured, but then oftentimes he steps out. My wife's got a friend. My wife's got a friend, and she's a beautiful girl. And, she's got this good looking husband, is Chad, owns a CrossFit gym. And, she was like, well, I don't know why, basically telling her about me when she met me. Like, I don't know why you would do that. Like, why you would settle for that. And blah, blah, blah. And my husband would never want that. And come to find out, this MFer's been cheating for 3 years. It just came out. And I'm like, dude, she got nothing from that. If I marry another woman, my wife gets blessed because I'm bringing another skill set into the home, and I'm not going to do anything that takes away from her. I'm not going to split my time and be sneaking out, taking things away from my wife and my child. No, it's going to all be under the same roof, and you're going to have to benefit from it too, because I've already made a lifetime commitment to you. I don't want a woman that comes in and makes it harder for me to fulfill my commitment to my first wife, because that is damn sure I'm going to fulfill. So like, I just,
I
the thing
don't
is,
think we want a man that only wants us though. Like I like that Rob looks around and he sees what else is out there. And like when he looks at me and he says, "You're beautiful," I know he's comparing me to the other women, not like
Yeah.
blinders on. Oh, my wife is beautiful.
Well, this is, I mean, yeah, I mean, different topic, not really, kind of the opposite of what we're talking about here. But one of the things I like to say is, it's, I do think that wives, I joke a lot of times that Ava's just kind of ruined me in that regard, right? Because it's like there was zero allure for me in cheating. I'm not saying Rob, like, yeah, I mean, I'm a dude just like you, and it's like, oh yeah, hey, that chick's kind of cute too, right? And whatever. But like, I've got a great chick right here, and it's like, anything else out there is going to be a downgrade. Why am I going to cheat over a downgrade? Like, that's ridiculous, right? And the wives that aren't putting themselves in that position, that's where this sort of shit's happening, right? Because the wife is not bringing their best to the marriage. They're not, they're not putting in all the effort. And it's like, well, yeah, you're opening the door to, like, there is actually a lot much better stuff out there than what you are. So,
wait, if you get another wife, I only have to put on makeup like 3 days a week.
No, all my wives have to look their best at all times, Avis.
I joke.
Well, let me kind of ask Rob, because I want to be respectful of your time here too, and we're already getting to an hour. But what, biblically speaking, in terms of the my understanding is, and you correct me here if I'm wrong, it's like there's no really scripture to point to that says, hey, the Bible says right here, like, polygyny is like what you should be doing. It's more of kind of the opposite, is my understanding, and maybe I'm wrong. It's more that it's like, well, the Bible's not banning it, and we see examples of it, and we, kind of what you were talking about before. I mean, I guess what I'm asking is, what is the biblical support for it? Is it more of a negative where the Bible doesn't ban it, or is it more of a positive where the Bible says, no, this is actually permitted, and do it?
Yeah. Well, first, the Bible says where there's no law, there's no transgression, right? So there is no law against it. So first off, it's the burden of proof is on the monogamy only side to show where it's a sin. Because if the Bible is silent about it, because the Bible is very specific. Like, it tells us all kinds of things as are sin. It goes as far as to tell us women not to sleep with animals, right? Like, God went to that length. So you think that he just forgot to mention not to have 2 wives. Come on. So there's that. So the burden of proof is on their side, and they can't produce a verse because it doesn't exist. But in certain cases, it was actually commanded. So Exodus 22:16 says, if a man seduces an unbetrothed virgin, he has to marry her. He has to pay the bride price to the father and marry her. It doesn't say if he's not married. And that some married men went out and fucked a virgin. And so guess what do we do now in church? If that happened in church, a married man went out and slept with a young girl, what would we do? We'd send them to, like, marriage counseling.
Right.
Yeah.
The virgin girl that's no longer a virgin, she would be cast out. She would be screwed, literally and figuratively, right? She would be cast aside, or he would go off with the young girl and he would ditch his family. That's what we would do now. So in that situation, it was commanded to enter into polygyny. Levirate marriage. If your brother dies and he has a wife, his widow, and she's childless, you got to marry her, bro, whether you're married or not. There was no clause that if you weren't married, you had to enter into a polygynous marriage. So people say, this thing was allowed. Bullshit. It's not. God came to David after he killed Uriah through the prophet Nathan. And he said, I gave you your wives, and I would have given you more if you asked, why'd you kill this dude? So God told David, I gave you your 18 wives, or how many of it were. And people say, they weren't really wives. They were just, David was just taking care of them. No, listen, that's not, it was in direct context to the fact that he took another dude's wife and had sex with her. He's like, why'd you do that? I gave you these women to have sex with. I would have given you more if you asked. Why'd you do this? And then if that's not enough, he takes David's wives away as punishment, and he gives them to another single dude, Absalom, his son. And he says he's going to have sex with them on the roof of the palace in front of the country, and that's your punishment. So if polygyny is this big sin, why wouldn't he give them the 18 dudes? Like, there are plenty of, there are other people around that would like to marry the king's wives, I'm sure, but he gave them to one man because polygyny is not a sin. So like, the biblical proof is there. You got to take off the monogamy only glasses, right? You got to realize that you've been lied to, you've been duped, and then you got to go back and see what scripture actually says.
Right.
I'm
So
not saying anybody needs to do this. You don't even have to like it. I'm not saying you
Yeah.
have to like it, but we need to stop calling it a sin when the Bible never does, because all it does is creates problems.
So
You can't add to God's words and not suffer because of it.
yeah.
Mhm.
So if I kind of just to summarize your answer, what I hear you saying is like, take off the monogamy only glasses that you've been wearing, just reread what's already there without that kind of presupposition. What am I trying to say?
We get it. We get it. The word doesn't matter.
Without that preconceived ideal, right? And just like took it with a reading, like, it doesn't support monogamy or,
Right.
Not monogamy only. Nothing wrong
Not
with
monogamy
monogamy.
only. Sorry.
Yeah, nothing wrong with monogamy. Monogamy is beautiful. Most
Yeah.
men would actually practice monogamy, I believe.
Well,
But when you add the only, that's if you read 1 Timothy 4, and Paul says that the Spirit expressly says in later times, many will follow the teachings, the doctrine of demons that forbids people to marry. That's what they're talking about. They're talking about now, later times now. And they're talking about monogamy only because you're forbidding people to marry under a marriage structure that God clearly permitted throughout for thousands of years. He permitted it. Like people try to say Genesis 2:24, they go back to the one flesh thing. And I'm like, do you really think you understand scripture better than the people who wrote it thousands of years after it was written? How naive do you have to be? These people were like taking shorthand from God. They were like listening to him and they were writing the word, and they were polygynous. And you're trying to think that you understand it better thousands of years later. It's the stupidest thing. But yet we've all been raised in it. So I get it. I get why people believe it, because you've been soaked in it, but it's not true.
What do you, so I'm sure I'm probably not familiar with all of the pushbacks on it. Right. But like some that I've heard are, well, Adam and Eve, right? Adam had one wife, right? Or at least that's the way it's presented. And I'll just give you kind of my own personal one that what I've basically said about this topic, or where I've kind of come to land on it is, I don't believe the Bible prohibits it, right? I'm kind of there at that point. I'm saying, yeah, it's a thing that's allowed if you want to. I don't believe it was meant to be normative, but from the point of view of if it was, and you would think that we would have kind of like a 2-to-1 ratio at a minimum between men and women. So that would be one of my pushbacks. But what I was just curious, like, how do you deal with those sorts of?
Yeah, well, those two things that you brought up. First, I hear the Adam and Eve thing a lot. So I'm like, first off, how'd that work out, right? Because that was a disaster. They destroyed the world, right? Let's be honest. And they raised the world's first murderer, right? One of their sons killed the other. So people like to say polygynous families had problems, and I'm like, dude, was it worse than Adam and Eve? Like, I can't imagine a worse outcome. The guy got separated. He had an intimate relationship with God, and he got separated from him because of his wife. So like, what could be worse than that? So, and if you look at the Faith Hall of Fame and Hebrews 11, it talks about all these great men. Adam's not in there, right? He's not mentioned, but guess who is mentioned? Abraham, Jacob, Gideon, all these polygamists are mentioned. Matthew 8, Jesus says, Abraham and Jacob will recline at the table in heaven. That's Jesus's words. Well, they both had multiple wives. So if it's this heinous sin, how the hell did they make it in? Right? If it's adultery, adulterers don't inherit the kingdom. How'd they get in? Because it's not a sin. So like, I would say that. The second thing to your point about the 50-50, like that's our human logic trying to understand the ways of the Most High. God says, my ways are higher than your ways. So there was a fascinating large-scale study that came out last year by the Proceedings of the National Academy of Sciences. Google it, check it out for yourself. It came out in October last year. They studied 30 different countries, 83 million census records. One of the countries was even the United States when polygamy was practiced back in the 1800s. And what they found was that in places where polygyny is common, there's fewer unmarried men, not more, fewer. Because men get married, they stop dragging their feet, dude. Like all those women, all those high value men marry, and the women that would have been in their rotation holding out for marriage from that one guy, getting older, waiting, hoping that he commits one day.
So
they would just
okay.
marry.
I can kind of get on board with that. What I hear you saying is that like a man heading into marriage with a different idea than he's stuck with this for life. Stuck. I mean, I say that, and you know what I mean. But like, that this is his one choice and he has to make it. He's going to be a lot more apt to make that choice. And maybe he gets into marriage and he's like, you know what, monogamy is great. I'm loving it. I don't even
100%.
need another wife, whatever. But
100%.
if he doesn't have the option of polygyny going into marriage, then he's kind of more in a mindset of, well, I'm only making one choice, and I really got to be careful about
He
that.
slow plays it. He
Yeah.
just drags it out. Because
Plus,
you know,
then
yeah.
women are getting married off a little earlier, younger, more moldable, more submissive.
Yeah.
It's a win-win. Yeah. I see
I mean,
that.
the thing is, if you took a woman's virginity, let's say you're 17 years old and you have sex with your girlfriend, she's 17 also, or whatever the age is. Are you less likely or more likely to marry her if you don't think that she's the only one you get for your entire life? You're more likely to marry her, right? Of course, as a man, but we don't. How often do people get married that young? Almost never. We send them off to college. We send women off to college during their most fertile years, and we give them birth control. That's the craziest shit, man. Like, that's not how it was supposed to be. Like
We can't go down
they
that
get
rabbit
older.
hole.
Yeah, and then they get older, and then
Hormones,
now they're
all
looking
that
for a
kind of-
husband
yeah.
when they're not as pretty and they're not as fertile, and they're wondering where all the good men are. It's like, no, look, we got to
Yeah.
get back to what the
If you're
Bible
choosing
says.
that husband when you're on birth control, you're choosing a beta over an alpha. It's a big thing. It's a whole
It is.
thing.
Yeah.
It
Maybe
really
it's like to
is.
go down the rabbit hole on that. There's a, yeah. Yeah. Okay. Well, so I guess I can kind of get on board with that, but only if all men don't choose a second wife. And I think that's the
Most
thing. Is
wouldn't.
like,
I think you're right. Most wouldn't, because what happens is, when you're to an uneducated man, polygyny sounds like a dream. Like, you're like, wow, it's just going to be constant sex, and you think. But then when you start really learning about it, you realize this is actually a lot of responsibility, right?
sure.
But and this is where, like, it just made, for me, it took a lot of the fear out of the decision, all the hesitation. Soon I was single for 23, 24 years. And then literally within 6 months of discovering polygyny, I was married. Like, that's not a coincidence. It's because it took all the fear out of the decision. And God knows how he wired men. Will I ever do it? I don't even know. But it's like the difference in, if you go into a room and I lock the door behind you, that room's going to feel a lot different than if the door's open. You might never leave. But if I lock it and tell you can't leave, now all of a sudden you're like, you know what I mean? Like, that's what it feels like under monogamy only to men. It just, something about it scares men. And then I don't even know anybody. I lived this world of purity. I was as far in it as anyone can be. And very few people, singles in the church, that have the opportunity to have sex are waiting. They're not.
Yeah.
Because of this doctrine, man. Like, it puts women in an impossible situation because the men that they want aren't asking. So the woman meets a guy, he's high value. She maybe wants to wait, but she knows, if I don't have sex with him, he's probably not sticking around, and other women aren't waiting. So she has sex with him because she's forced into it. And then the guy probably dips anyway, or maybe has sex with her for a while. Occasionally she gets the commitment, but again, the numbers don't lie. The divorce rate's sky high. So, like, I think it's real. This is how women suffer because of it, because it puts them in, like, when so few men, that the men that they actually want are willing to commit, and then you tell a woman to wait. It's just like, it's unrealistic. It's like, you can't wait,
I think the whole, like, room with the locked door is pretty interesting too, because I hear a lot of women who are wearing the monogamy glasses. They're like, a man can't handle two women. They can barely handle one woman. But I think monogamy locks a lot of men into not really leading how they should be leading. Like,
Well, and you couple that with the state being involved. You
right.
have the perfect storm.
Right. So there's fearful leadership, not like meaningful leadership. And so they're cutting their ability to lead because of the state and all of that. And so, like, women aren't getting the full picture of a man that could be polygamist or polygynist.
Yeah, well,
or
I think
even
you're
a better
right.
leader.
Most men can't lead more than one woman. You're right. I don't even think there's a lot of men can't even lead one woman. And I think that, again, this is why God allowed polygyny, because there are some men that can, though. The highest capacity men, they can handle more than one. So I know guys with 3 wives, 4 wives. If you choose wisely and they get along, and they're Proverbs 31 women, a Proverbs 31 woman is going to make your life easier. She is, right? She's not going to she's not a net negative. She's a net positive.
Right.
So, like, if you find a woman like that, it's not going to be a drain. But again, to your point, a lot of men can't. And that's why God allows polygyny, because the men that can he does want all of his daughters to have a covering. That's what I believe. I don't think that he wanted any of his daughters to be single and childless. I just didn't think that he wanted that. So this is why he allows the best men to cover more than one.
It's making a lot of sense.
Let me ask you another question. From a practical, kind of back to this whole dating side of it. So like, a topic that gets kicked around a lot is like, well, should you have sex before marriage? Should you not have sex before marriage? And by not having sex before marriage, all of a sudden you're married and you're like, shit, now I've got this incompatible sex thing going on. Everybody's miserable and all that other stuff. I mean, does that still apply in this polygynist, dynamic where like, I mean, I think if we're just honest about it, right? I mean, most couples, even in monogamy, they're having sex before they get married, right? It's more common to do that than not.
Yeah.
And then you hear about the occasional, well, we stayed virgins and then we hate each other because the sex sucks, whatever, right? But like, how is that handled in the polygyny? Like, are men that are dating, like, are they having premarital sex with these women before they decide to bring them in as a wife? Or is it, is that even banned by the Bible? The reason I'm asking this question is because you had a guest on one of your podcasts I watched not too long ago, and it was an older gentleman, I think with a beard.
Glenn Bronstein, yeah.
Glenn, yes. And he was talking about this topic, from his point of view, that like it's not adultery for a married man to go out and have sex with another woman who's not his wife, so long as she's also not married, if I understood the context correctly. So in this, like, you're vetting for a wife, is it biblical? Would you say it's biblical for you to be having premarital sex with this wife, just like you would in a monogamous relationship, which most people would say, well, no, that's not biblical. So I don't know. Does that make any sense where I'm asking?
No, I hear you. No, trust me. I didn't want to have that conversation with Glenn because, I paid a heavy price to believe in that sex before marriage was a sin. Like I really suffered believing that. Right. And I was like, if this is not true, like I'm going to have even more regret than I have because of monogamy only. Like monogamy only, I have a lot of regret that I didn't look into it sooner. But yeah, he said that to me in a conversation that sex before marriage wasn't a sin. I was like, what? And I didn't want to find out because I just didn't want to know. But then at some point I was like, the truth just matters to me more. So like fornication is what you're talking about. It's not adultery. Okay. So if a married man has sex with a single woman, it's not adultery. It's impossible for a single woman to have adultery. Actually, there has to be a married woman involved. Okay. But is it fornication? That's the question, right? Because that's what everybody says. Fornication, come to find out, isn't even a word that is in any language that the Bible was written in. It's a Latin word. So where did it come from? Some people say porneia. Well, what is porneia? Porneia is a Greek word for sexual immorality. Well, where do you find out what sexual immorality is? You got to go back to Leviticus chapter 18. It says there's all kinds of things that are forbidden sexually: incest, bestiality, male homosexuality, all things. But guess what's not in there? Sex before marriage. It's not no such thing, right? So where do I stand on it now? Man, I'm torn, to be honest. Like the only woman I've been with the past 9 years is my wife, and we save sex for marriage. Will I probably wait moving forward? Yes. Not because I think it's a sin not to, but more for the fact that all these churchians, I don't even call them Christians, I call them churchians, that are in my comments criticizing me that I'm full of lust. I'll do it just because they don't. They don't even wait, and yet they're criticizing me who waited. I'll save sex for marriage with my future wives just to shove it down their throat that I did, because I know that they don't. Right?
Out of spite. We like that.
It really does put. This is because I think this is the unintended consequence of that doctrine is sex before marriage, because it allows women, like in the Bible, the women that were protected were virgins and widows. Okay, so if you slept with a virgin, you had to pay the bride price and marry her, unless the father vetoed it. And widows were, you could marry a widow. But if you weren't a virgin or a widow, you were basically, they didn't even classify you. So like what happens now is women will go through their 20s and they'll run up a body count, and then they'll come to Jesus, and now you got to wait. You got to pay full price, sir. I've been giving it away to all these dudes. Yeah. But now, because the Bible says so, you got to wait. And they put the man, it like allows women to cross categories. It completely absolves that woman of her mistakes, of her decisions, because now all of a sudden she puts it off on God. Like, well, God said so, but he didn't say so. So I think if we were to say, listen, now look, does that mean that a man can't marry a woman that had sex? Of course he can. But it changes her attitude, because she would know, instead of coming into the marriage with a sense of entitlement, which I see it, dude. I see these women that I fucked 5 of my friends, and then now they're in church and they think that they're holier than thou because they're in a committed relationship with their boyfriend that they're having sex with. And they think that they're better than me because I'm talking about polygyny. And I'm like, look, that man can marry you, but you shouldn't think that you're deserving of wife. You're not. You don't wear that wife material t-shirt. You don't deserve it. You're not wife material according to the Bible, right? He might marry you, but humble your ass and realize that you fucked up because you went out and slept with 10 dudes in your 20s, and you're not deserving of marriage anymore. Would men or would women protect their purity more if they couldn't get this get out of jail free card called no sex before marriage, or sex before marriage is a sin? I think they would. I think that if they knew that once they lose the V card, their virginity, that they're in their wilderness and you're on your own, woman. You don't put it back on God, because now you're on your own, right? That would make her protect her purity, because now she can cross categories. Now she can go from prostitute to wife material because I repented, like it. I do think it's damaging to say the purity culture has done a certain level of damage to women and to men. But I still think, most of the guys in my program are waiting, because that's who I still have it in me, like that. I believe it's valuable. I mean, me and my wife waited, and, we dated for, I think 8 months before we married, and it wasn't easy, but, they give me a lot of clarity. Yeah, it gave me a lot of clarity. I do think you can certainly, there's certainly risks that you run having sex outside of marriage. You got STDs, you got unwanted pregnancies. You could just get hemmed up with the wrong person and end up marrying her because you get, like hearts in your eyes or whatever. So there are definitely legitimate risks. But I would say one thing that too is, like, if you put this rule on Christian men that sex before marriage is a sin, like, as a lot of the guys in my program are dealing with this now. They're looking for a second wife. These are good men that love the Lord, right? But because the women have been indoctrinated to believe that polygyny is like less than monogamy, if they're settling in some way, and because they can't actually really get physical with them, it really takes a tool out of your tool belt. Because, like if I have sex with a girl, a lot of times she would fall in love with me. Right now, as a Christian man, I can't really do that. So guess what? Guess who she falls in love with? The guy that's not a Christian. And then she ends up marrying him. Yeah. And then he ends up being a scumbag anyway and cheats. And then she has kids by him and he doesn't lead her closer to God. So, like, it really kind of puts like a lot of extra weight and like a lot of extra challenges on the Christian men, because now you're not playing on a level playing field. Because all the dudes that aren't Christians, they're not waiting. They're banging that girl that you want, and she's falling in love with him. So, like, I do see, I'm kind of torn on it, to be honest. Like, I don't think it's a sin, but I can't say it's wise either to go out and do, and I probably won't do it myself. Yeah. But
it's one of these like super messy topics that is like, no matter what angle you come at it from, you're like, I don't know what the right choice is. I was just thinking about what you were saying with from a man's point of view, and you've got a wife, you've got a great wife you're having sex with, all that other, and you're going to bring another wife in, and you're like, okay, well, I mean, even if we're not sexually compatible, she's still adding to the household, whatever, right? But for her, because you still got a wife you enjoy having sex with, right? Even though maybe you and she aren't compatible, the second wife you brought in. So now for her, what does that mean, right? Because now she's
she's just a workhorse.
She's just a workhorse for you, right? So, like, and again, and I'm not, because I too would agree with you. I'd be like, well, yeah, you don't have sex before marriage. I mean, that seems like the more ideal thing to do. But then you end up in these weird corner case situations, and it's like, I don't know what the right answer is.
Yeah. I heard somebody say in a movie once, sex is like pizza. Even when it's bad, it's still pretty good. Yeah. Like,
and I feel like there's room for improvement, right? Like, sex can be learned.
Yeah. Practice makes perfect, right? Like,
100%.
if you're a man and you know how to put it on a woman, like, I think you can teach a woman for sure how to be better in bed and what you like and don't like. But at the end of the day, like I used to say, and I still say, that if you're, in my book, I read the statistics. the time that you're in bed is like 0.45% of your life, right? So like 99.455% of the time, you're not having sex with that person. So like all that other shit's way more important, you know, like if we ain't got that right, I'm not even going to want to have sex with you anyway, to be honest. Like, so that to me is more important, is like, are we partners, or like, are you like a real team? You know, like me and my wife are a real team. We fit really well together. Yeah, good sex, but it's, you know, like it's the icing on the cake. It's not the cake, you know.
So was your wife into polygyny when you got together? Is this something that you introduced to her?
Yeah, it's a good question. So her story was, so she was in a 15 or 18, it was a long relationship. Ever since she was like a young teenager, she had a boyfriend, and he was a high value man, like became super wealthy at some point, and tall, good looking guy. But she just kind of realized it might be hard for, and he wasn't asking for marriage. Okay. So they've been dating for 12 years or something. And she's like, she got it in her head, I need to open up the relationship on his end in order to keep him, I guess. Or basically, like a man like this is going to have a hard time being monogamous his entire life. It was her line of thinking. So basically he wasn't a believer, but the relationship became open on his end, and where he could go out and have sex with other women. And she knew about it, and it was good for a while, but it kind of blew up in her face because he ended up kind of falling for some other girl and basically left her. And so then she was like, well, I'll never do that again. I only want monogamy.
Which would make perfect sense for a guy that's like in a monogamy only headset.
Right.
Exactly.
Headspace, right.
And the guy's still single, and he's had sex with so many girls since they broke up because he's trying to find the one. Which is another whole conversation. One-itis, not a thing. Nothing wrong with finding a great one, but to say the one, that this is what it does. It makes men artificially hypergamous. When we're not supposed to be hypergamous, the women are. But what we do is we keep waiting for that one unicorn that checks all the boxes. But we'll sleep with all the others until she comes along. So like this is how it messes up the dating pool. But so that was it blew up in her face, and she thought, I'll never want that again. And then she saw, she had followed me because she was Googling no sex before marriage, and she found something I posted online, followed me on Instagram, and she saw something I posted about polygyny, and she was like, what? You know, I didn't know this was a thing, basically. So she sent me a DM, and we had chatted real briefly, and she said, oh, I have a story about that or something. And of course I'm like, boop, you know, my radar's up, because most women are not saying even anything that polite, right? They're mostly like hating on it, at least at this point, a couple years ago. And so I was like, well, I want to hear that story. And I had to pursue her a little bit to get her to tell me, but it was clearly God. Like she even, when she sent the message, she said, I thought, why am I telling this stranger this intimate story about my life? And she said she wanted to erase the message after she sent it, but she couldn't for whatever reason. She even thought, this is weird, whatever. And then it led to us talking. And that was our first conversation, was about biblical polygyny. We prayed on the first or second call, and so right from the jump, I was like, look, this is what I believe. I don't know if I'll practice it, but this is what the Bible says. So it wasn't like she was blindsided. She was able to choose, you know, with both eyes open, if this was what she wanted. And you know,
I don't know how active she is in the community, but would she be open to a conversation with a few other women, just to like girls with girls, just kick it around, how she feels about it? And
that was actually a question I had for you, just to kind of like talk about, because I know you have a community and all that. Yeah, I was going to ask, is there also a community? Because your community, I believe, is mostly for men, from what I understand.
It's just men.
Is there a community for women?
Yeah, so she runs a group called Faithful Femininity. It's about 20 women in there right now. And some women are in plural marriages, and some are single, just kind of kicking the tires on it. That to me, honestly, is the biggest frustrating thing, because I know a lot of single women from when I was running my parachurch ministry, and I think I can count on one hand how many marriages that I know have happened in my really large group of friends and multiple churches I kind of used to attend, that have happened in the past couple of years. It's like nobody's getting married. It's like to see these great men, these men that love the Lord, that are willing to marry them quickly, probably too. and provide and protect for them. And then these women that really want a husband and they're believing for it. And they're right in the middle is this false doctrine, just keeping the two people apart. It's like the most frustrating thing, because I just believe the biological family is the greatest weapon that we have to take dominion over the earth and populate heaven. Right. But Satan has blinded us to believing that, falsely believing that men only get one wife. So it just stops everything. It just holds everything up. But yeah, I think my wife would totally be up for that. And look, if there's some single women, I'd love to make some introductions, because I got some good chads. I got some really good looking guys in my group, like that high value dudes, like jacked business owners, like that are looking for additional wives, and they would make fantastic. They're already fantastic husbands. So yeah, she would love that.
Sweet. Maybe we can set something up.
Cool. All right, Rob. Well, thank you so much. Good conversation. I guess in the interest of wrapping this thing up, tell me how do people get in touch with you? How do they follow you? How do they get your community? I think you have a book that's coming out, I believe I saw.
Yeah. Thank you. So just my website, robbkowalski, my name.com. I got links to the book. You can purchase. Actually, you can get the PDF the day you order it, but the print version will probably be out a little bit. I'm trying to see if I can find a publishing deal, which is kind of a long shot, but we'll see. But there's links to the Man of Options program, my wife's program, blogs. I actually have a scripture index, which is new. I just put that up. What does the Bible actually say? And here's the common objections. Here's the verses that you've been told, and here they are in proper context. So I would challenge anybody, even if you don't want to buy the book, just go there and do some research for yourself. Don't believe anything I say. I always tell people, don't believe anything that I say. Research this for yourself. The other side will tell you, don't research this, just believe what we say, right? That's how no, look into this for yourself. Yeah. It's not, the truth is there. It's not hard to find. But yeah, robbkowalski.com. If you want to order the book, you can go to the website, or you can just go to polygamybook.com. I bought that URL. And manofoptions.com will take you straight to the course and community. All right. Good stuff. Well, Rob, thank you again so much for your time. I appreciate it. And if you don't mind, I want to get that link from you that you said was kind of the thing that got you thinking about all this. And maybe I'll link that in the description, for this Absolutely. I'd love to give you that.
Give it a read. Yep. Awesome. All right. Well, we appreciate your time, and I'm sure we'll be talking more. Thank you.
Sounds good. Thank you for the opportunity.